is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. It's good to be back. We've got a good show on tap for you this morning. We're going to open up the phone lines and allow you to join in the conversation with Davidson County's top cop. One of two, I suppose, along with Sheriff. Well, we have Sheriff Daron Hall with us, along with Police Chief Anderson. But you guys kind of share that moniker. To me, you'll always be top dog. The law dog. How are you, Sheriff?
I'm great. How you doing, Nick?
It's nice to have you on. How was your weekend?
It was good. Gosh, the weather's been so hard to fool with. But I had a decent day yesterday. But
sorry about your bracket. That's okay. But yeah, you've never really been good at picking those NCAA March Madness brackets, have you? And I understand.
Hey, if you pick Kentucky, you're pretty good this year.
Did you pick Kentucky along with everyone else?
Yeah, I don't like it when it's just lopsided. Lopsided. I'd rather it be. A little more competitive.
It was a pretty close game with Notre Dame. Kentucky almost lost. This is not a sports show, but I had to throw that because you are a sporting man and all of that. Thought I'd bring that up. And a lot of stuff to talk about. We'll open up the phone line, 737-7587. I was wondering, just we were trying to think, how many people did you give sober rides to on St. Patty's Day?
Yeah, I think right at 300 or so. And
really?
It was a 200 plus, I think. But we... it was a Tuesday night, which typically is a slower night, but we've kind of learned that the way Nashville is nowadays, especially on a night like that, it's kind of 4 or 5 areas where it's really concentrated. Yeah. So, and I think more so maybe than New Year's, we're giving locals. I mean, New Year's, there's so many people from all over the place going to hotels and everything. So I really think it may be, in some cases, may even be more of a success because you're taking someone to their home and
as opposed to back to a hotel or something like that. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
More. I remember years and years ago where, you used to have all these kind of the restaurants and bars around town, and you'd go to one restaurant, pick someone up, and take them. Now it's concentrated with 1,000 people or so at each one of these areas of town, and you're just getting them in and out. But most all those folks on Tuesday night probably would have put themselves behind the wheel. That's what I think, because they live here and they think I can drive home, and so I think we're doing a better service sometimes on that holiday than New Year's.
A lot of people coming into town, just you talking about this, kind of shifting to another topic, but this next month, the NRA is coming with a huge, one of the big conventions that they talked about. We're going to get big ones like this when we get the Music City Center. And, I just mentioned that, and I don't know if you're having any involvement with the conference. There's some movers and shakers, some possible political candidates coming in as well. And they're even talking about trying to push and pass some legislation to allow for guns in local parks before they get. It's just interesting. What's your take on the whole hullabaloo over what's definitely a very big, high-profile convention, National Rifle Association?
Yeah, I mean, it's a business, first of all. I mean, it's really good for the city and the numbers of people, maybe one of the largest ones. And it's hard, and I'm not in the convention business, but it's hard to attract those types of those numbers anyway when our hotel situation the way it is. But I think it's just part of the process. I kind of get a kick out of it because I've done a lot of conferences over the years, and it's always interesting how it just turns over. It's the beginning and the end of that, and so I view it that way. I've had a lot of calls. We have some issues, different things that are going on from protest potential and other situations.
That's what I was wondering, and I don't know. Whenever you have an issue with the guns and the gun rights, there's, I think that's one reason the NRA chose Tennessee. I mean, people here love their Second Amendment rights, but at the same time, I was curious if you've gotten any word or what kind of preparation you have in place. Should there be any type of protests? And we don't know that's going to happen, but
I've talked with some folks over the last several months that are interested in doing some stuff themselves. And really, what they're interested in is kind of more of a I can't think of the name of the organization, to be honest with you. There's a woman that's a friend of mine, and but anyway, they're wanting to do some stuff themselves out and about, and have called, and I've sent them. We work directly with the police department on kind of the whole crowd control issue, and also mass arrest plans under any protest situation. That happens all the time. We're doing that, so that's pretty traditional. But I think it'll be interesting just to see what really happens. I mean, at the whether it's at the Music City Center, actually back here in the Bicentennial Mall, there's an event planned. I forget which day it is, and there's some concern maybe about protest at the event and so forth. So But you know, I don't know. I don't look at cities like D.C. I mean, gosh, there's a protest every day.
Yeah, and there's conventions there every single. Doesn't and the protest. I don't have any problem with protests as long as they're peaceful. You know, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of protests. Well, heck, you know, the Klan marching or stuff like that. I detest the thought of that. Okay, I hate that. But you have to allow them as long as they get the proper licensing, just like anyone else, right? And you know, that's America.
I mean, I kind of refer to it more as mass arrest in my mind, the potential, because that's really what we do. We're kind of preparing in case there is, and obviously in crowd control. But gosh, it's probably been 20 years ago. I remember, I won't ever forget, Peterbilt went on strike, and there was a big deal going on out in the Rivergate area. And
I remember that.
Yeah, and then another, I remember the, was it ADAPT? And they would, these are folks that are quadriplegic and have all sorts of disabilities and so forth, and they would chain themselves to cars and doors and all these protests, and then there was arrest, and we're housing these folks, and it was just it was really, over the years, a lot of that type of activity where you have the potential to occupy, arrest, remember that situation, and it just seems like, you know, I think the city and the country as a whole has gotten much better, I think, at that. The idea that, you know, you have a right to protest, you should peacefully do that, and I think, you know, Nashville's done a really good job lately with the events of Ferguson and others, and as far as the protest situation goes.
And the tolerance that comes with it. I think we've seen it, and you've seen Chief Anderson, I think, has done just a terrific job in the way, you know, you kind of tolerate how things go, and you let them do their thing, even if that means maybe providing some security for them while they do it. I wonder, what do you tell the deputies when you do? That example you gave of someone who chains themselves or lays down, and you know there's cameras everywhere. And I keep seeing, and it wasn't local, but video again of police officers somewhere beating someone up, or not, you know, or getting, you know, over the top. With someone who maybe is resisting, and you should just never resist, but that doesn't mean it gives the officer, and I'm like, do these guys not get a clue? I was watching this, I forget where it was over the weekend again, and the law enforcement officers, and it's all right there on camera, and clearly again, and I don't know the whole story, but they're boom, 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 and the guy's down, and I'm like, with all that's going on, if you're in law enforcement and you don't understand that you better be very, very cautious with how you use force. And I don't mean don't use it, sometimes you have to. But wow, and so I'm wondering what you tell your deputies. I mean, do you have to, you remind them, I know you've probably had special training, when you're out there and someone's lying down and you have to remove them from the place, well, you be gentle, I don't want to see any rough stuff, you know, if you have to protect yourself, certainly, but it's going to be on camera. If you mess up, you're the one that's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I always say welcome to the headline. That's and the reality is what you were doing yesterday in your position and where you worked and so forth, you know, before coming here is one thing, meaning it's probably not going to be videoed, and you're probably not going to be in a detaining or restraining role. But now that you're here and you're doing this, it is, everything you do is not only subject to the public record, but the reality of what you're going to be exposed to, the liability, the embarrassment to your family, and what it puts everybody through. And you know, I want to believe that the next generation of people coming into this line of work will understand that a little better. I think, again, I'm talking about a generation from now, because it's, you know, it's a tough situation. I mean, you know, I think about kids, you know, when you're you know, you raise children and how stressful, how frustrating that can be at times, and the issues that I can see if you don't have a support system and things going on around you, and you have kids running around, all sorts of problems happening, how you treat that child in the event that takes place, to me is critical. And unfortunately, we know of situations that are mishandled. Well, a lot of times law enforcement's in the same situation. If you come to work with a chip on your shoulder, and you come here for reasons that are not legitimate, and then something doesn't go your way, and you take your actions out on somebody else, you're very likely to go to prison, you're very likely to obviously lose your job, and all sorts of things.
And you've had this conversation with your deputies?
Well, yes. I meet with them the first morning and and I always say this too, you know, I can't tell you what I would do in a certain situation. I really can't. I mean,
it's not fair. Sometimes you say, well, you don't know till you're in that situation.
Right, but I can tell you this, that we expect you to be honest about it. That's the first thing. When it happens, and then we'll try to figure, you may need help. You may have your own issues going on in your life. One thing that people don't talk about in the world of law enforcement is that you know, it is a very difficult thing to break down someone that is going through issues away from work and comes to work and them wanting help and needing help. I'm talking about for their own stress in their life. Sometimes they get to work and that comes out in the wrong way, and they act out and they do things they shouldn't do. And it's a macho-based society that we live in, and I do want them to be able to need and seek help when they need it. And they get in these situations, and I don't mean necessarily acting out with an arrestee, but where it's all on them, and whether their home life is bad or their personal life is stressed. And sometimes I think all that comes out, and then they unfortunately don't always tell the truth about it. Then it leads to other problems. They get fired. They may get sued. It just all compounds itself. And I think the best way to say it is, I can't tell you what I would do. I can tell you what you're supposed to do by policy and by law. If you do something you shouldn't do in this line of work, the first thing you need to do is be honest about it, and we'll try to work through it. I mean, and that's just the reality. Everybody has a right. Y'all have people here who are going to have bad days and act out in a way that may be.
But I'm not carrying a gun or a billy club or a taser or anything like that.
Right.
And so I mean, you're right. We all have bad days. But that doesn't mean hopefully your training's got to kick in that I'm going to do a lousy story and libel someone because I had a bad weekend.
Right.
You know, but again, with law enforcement, they're out there putting their lives on the line, and there's a lot more stress. I'm not comparing what I do with what officers do when they're working the streets.
And I think the pressure of the media and the pressure of cameras, and again, that's a whole generation to me that we're living through right now. I mean, I really think the Rodney King situation was the first video-based, you know, and it's in this generation that's working in law enforcement now, kind of came on with all that. But I think the next generation I think body cameras will be probably a regular process.
More and more of them putting that in. Body cameras can be as revealing for what an officer is doing as to what kind of things the officer faces out there, and sometimes it gives vindication to what their actions are. Look, we got to take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll take some calls. Joe and others, if you're on hold, stay. There are any general questions. I'm just hitting different points that pop into my head, and there may be some things the sheriff wants to bring up and talk about as well. The number is 737-7587. Back with more of your calls right after this.